Flood is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good public policy is based on facts. We must understand the issues in order to draft strong, effective legislation. That's the whole reason we came to work here in Washington and to hold hearings, to meet with our constituents, to pass legislation to serve our communities back home. Unfortunately, this hearing today has nothing to do with finding facts or crafting strong legislation. It's merely a messaging tactic by my colleagues across the aisle to create a false narrative about Republicans and to drum up votes before the midterm elections. The left knows they're losing, and this hearing is purely a last-ditch effort to save their sinking ship. So let's talk about facts. I support common-sense abortion regulation. That's why in 2011, as the Speaker of the Nebraska State Legislature, I introduced and passed the nation's first 20-week abortion ban. Out of 49 state senators in our unique unicameral, I got 44 votes for this legislation. That included over 10 Democrats. It was truly a bipartisan bill that set the stage for a similar 20-week ban in many states, and right now, Democrats in my state are telling me they're comfortable with the 20 weeks. I truly believe a great number of Americans and Nebraskans support these common-sense regulations. And I believe it's important that these conversations need to happen in the state legislature. That's what we did in Nebraska. That's what the Dobbs decision meant, and will benefit us as Nebraskans and Americans from having these conversations. So I have a question for Dr. Shero Wubenhorst. Nebraska state law bans abortions at 20 weeks of pregnancy. Can you explain where a child is developmentally at this point during the mother's pregnancy?
Well, I think it's an excellent question, and actually, at 20 weeks, children are fairly well developed. If you remember, if we can remember that previously viability was defined somewhere around 28 weeks, that number has been pushed relentlessly back by the neonatologists. So now we're at a point where around 21 or 22 weeks, children who are born at that gestational age have a reasonable chance of survival. At that gestational age, typically children's eyelids may be fused. They usually are fused. But in terms of their ability to move, their ability to perceive pain, their ability, their bodily functions, they're well on the way to being at the age of viability. And as I said, that's really only 1 or 2 more weeks past that particular time at 20 weeks.
Many on the left, pro-abortion activists, they support late-term abortion and abortion even up until birth. Can you explain where a child is developmentally at 7 months into the child's to the mother's pregnancy? So
by 7 months, the baby's lungs are actually extremely well developed, and those infants have, again, at this point in time, a fairly high rate of success in terms of being able to transition to extrauterine life. By that point, as I said, their lungs are developed, though still immature. Their brains are developed, though still immature. They are able to interact with the environment. And while they definitely suffer from certain GI problems like colitis occasionally because of their prematurity, they are really very much along the lines of very close to being, with proper care, able to survive and do extremely well.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I think it's important to note, and people ask me this all the time, they say, Nebraska was the first state in the nation to do this. How did this get passed? And I think it has more to do with the fact that our technology has come so far that you can see an ultrasound of a child and you can see the fingers and the toes and the legs and the head, and you can say to yourself, I've created a life here. That's right. What's the impact of the technology and the ultrasound and the 3D imaging when you work with patients, when you talk to patients? Have you seen a change over during your practice with the benefits of technology?
Oh, tremendous change in virtually every area related to neonatology. And as far as imaging is concerned, again, early in my training, ultrasound was grainy, it was difficult, it had low resolution, and very often it was a question as to whether it was actually a helpful technology. And again, now we're at the point of being able to see these 3-dimensional and 4-dimensional renderings. I think the other point that you've brought up earlier, though, in talking about what's going on at 20 weeks and 28 weeks, those infants now are able to survive with assistance, with surfactant and our other technologies. So to abort that infant or to allow it to be born and then neglect it so that it dies is very problematic for me. If you have an infant that is able to survive, that is able to be cared for appropriately, then essentially you're making a decision that amounts to infanticide.
Thank you for your testimony. I yield back.